Today will be a really short impression of the latest Hasselblad camera. This is the 907X with the CFV100c. Now, this camera is provided me by Cles Distribution for the purpose of review. It's not going to be given to me. I'm going to return it, in fact, tomorrow. I'm just only loaning it over the weekends to just try it out and give an initial impression of this camera. Now, I have done an initial impression of the 907X with the 50 megapixel back. Take a look at the link up here. Essentially, it's the same camera with the updated electronics from the X2D. And I'll talk about it a little bit on this review here so that you know about it. And also the same issues I faced with the original version, there are some still here. Now first, let's look at the camera body itself. I mean, this is the traditional 907X with the digital back. Very beautiful. And of course, this lens is mine. This is the 55mm lens. I did a review previously. Really beautiful lens. And combined with this camera, it looks so damn classy. And when you pull it out and just shoot this way, oh my, it feels so good. Now, this camera itself is 100 megapixel, uses the latest X2D stuff, but the front here is the same thing. So you can also mount the handle, which is provided to me here. And when it comes to using batteries and storages, this thing has internal 1TB of memory. I'll show you in the menu later. And it also uses the standard Hasselblad battery here, which you push into there and then you hide it up. Other than that, there is really not much. I mean, the 907X has the button in front. This is to shutter release, and then there's a wheel here. The wheel is to allow you to change the shutter or aperture, and you can actually select shutter aperture by pressing this button here and turning it here. And then there is a lens release down here, and then the lugs here to actually put belts or any form of slings. Now, if you look at the back, this is where the new stuff is. This is, as I said again, the 100 megapixel version with the X2D firmware. So if you do press the menu here, you can select, autofocus is off because it's on manual focus. Let me sort. You can actually select face detection here. Face detection has some issues. I will actually talk about it in another review because this is essentially the same as the X2D one, and I don't think it's a very good implementation, but that's for another video. But you can essentially select, autofocus standard and of course face detection itself. You can of course select everything else on the menu just like the original 50 megapixel. It's just a lot more responsive, just like the X2D. And you notice the number here is ridiculously huge, 4759, because it has the inbuilt SSD, same as the X2D. You notice there is no CF Express card here, but you still have tons of storage. In fact, you press here and go into storage, you can see the immense amount of storage inside. So you can see that this is pretty much it. I mean, everything else is very similar to the old 907X. I mean, you can select all the various functions. It's just a lot more responsive, a lot more easier to use. And you can select like autofocus point, bigger, smaller kind of stuff. Essentially, this is the same as the X2D, so there is really not much to talk about. But there is one major difference, and that is, notice there's no stabilization on this menu. In fact, let me show you what I mean by that. So if you actually go in the X2D menu, and then you press, menu here, notice that there is a stabilization option. There is no stabilization option on the 100 version of this 907X because there is no stabilization on this camera itself, which is a major issue. I'll talk about it later also. Other than that, you can see everything else is the same, essentially the same as the X2D in every single way. Now, to fire flash, just like the previous 50 megapixel version, you have to use a flash sync port on the bottom here. You can also put the triggers and stuff on the bottom of this thing. So it doesn't have a hot shoe, and I think they should upgrade this handle here with the hot shoe, and that would have solved a lot of problems. Really a lot of problems. I still think that, this guy needs a proper hot shoe, be it on the camera itself or on the handle, not using some flash sync port, which I really dislike. Well, other than that, the lack of image stabilization is a major issue if you ask me, because this is a 100 megapixel camera. Just to demonstrate you, I did a shoot of Final Fantasy. Let me show you a photo that is shot properly with my X2D. Now, if I shoot with this camera, I have some issues getting things sharp, because see this is 1/60 of a shutter. Let me press here properly for a second. You can see this is the 8mm lens, so by right 1/60 of a shutter should be enough if you follow the normal rule. But because of its pixel density, it doesn't quite work that way. If I zoom it in, you can see this picture is actually soft. It is soft. And that is where the issue lies, because 100 megapixel cameras really require the image stabilization to ensure that the pixels are sharp even at, normal shutter speed, because in normal cameras you don't have so many pixels and therefore so much pixel density and therefore have shake because you didn't hold your camera stable on this 100 megapixel sensor itself. You need the image stabilization just to make sure that the photos are sharp in normal shutter speed. And you can see 160 of a shutter with the 8mm. I tell you that I shot like a few shots here. Most of them are soft except for one, which is a full body shot here. It's fine. Other than that, everything else was a little bit soft. Not the sharpness that I'm used to in my X2D. And that is, if you ask me, the biggest difference that you must consider. Now, if you really ask me, if you are into this form factor, this is absolutely beautiful. Especially with the latest lens, absolutely beautiful. But you give up the image stabilization and of course the flash sync port. So this is great for landscape shooters. I mean, shooting this way is just awesome, right? Look at this awesome way of shooting. But if you are not a landscape shooter, you want to shoot a bit of portraits, you want to shoot a bit of everything else, not the best. Now, of course, you can put on the handle here. Once you put on the handle and you on it, you can do a few things. Like, most importantly, there is a joystick. Joystick. This is so important, right? If the 907X have a joystick, but the X2D doesn't, I have no idea why. This, I mean, is an old handle. I don't think this is the new handle. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I didn't get a handle the last time. But, why not a joystick here? Why? But the joystick is great. You see, you can zoom in the joystick too. It's just a nice implementation. Other than that, you can control various things with joystick, on the menu, press the play and everything. It's just a nice implementation. But once again, going back to what I think about this camera, if you need to buy the joystick to use the camera, I don't think this camera is for you, because the X2D just does it better. I mean, it has EVF, it has everything, proper handle, proper way of using. If you are going to buy the handle, you look at the size. I mean, once you add the handle in, there is no longer an advantage of size, and it also looks really not slick. I mean, look at this. It's just not as nice as, without the handle itself. Just remove the handle away. Be careful. Just remove the handle away, and this just looks awesome. Beautiful camera, right? So pretty much that's my initial impression. The Hasselblad 907X with the CFV100c. This is an upgrade to the previous version, 100 megapixel sensor, exactly the same output as the X2D. You even get the HEIF implementation. You can see here, the HEIF implementation of the thing here. This is the latest implementation, latest firmware. You also get like things like IAF, and you get internal storage. It's an upgrade, definitely. But between these and the X2D, for practical reasons, I think the X2D is the better camera. And you don't really lose much using the X2D other than form factor. In fact, you gain the IS, which is everything else. However, if you like this form factor, this way of holding and shooting, especially for landscape, get this camera, because I don't think you can replace the feel of this in anything else. But if you want for practical reason, I think the X2D is the way to go. It is a more practical camera in every single way more practical than this, but this is just beautiful. I have to say, this is just beautiful. I mean, not being biased here, but nothing beats this feel of it. And that's about it for today. This is the review of the Hasselblad 907X with the CFV100c. And once again, I thank Cles Distribution for loaning me this copy. I'm going to return it tomorrow, so it's probably the end of it. But I really like the feel of this camera just like this. I mean, slot in the back, take out and shoot. Beautiful. But as a practical camera, especially as an owner of an X2D here, I find no reason to own it, because it's not my cup of tea. Not my cup of tea because it doesn't have the hot shoe, it doesn't have image stabilization. But if it's your cup of tea and you like this form factor and you're going to put it on a tripod, especially to use it anyway, buy it. Beautiful camera. I really enjoy this. And for that, thanks everybody for your time, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.